This is Ann Steenwyk. Ann is a member at Calvin CRC, and she is also my daughter's principal at Sheboygan Christian School. So, in the vein of Greg Zonefeld, you're wearing two hats on the program today, Mrs. Steenwyk. Would you introduce yourself to people who don't know you?
Yeah, thank you, Zach. My name is Ann Steenwyk. I am a member of Calvin Christian Reformed Church with my husband, Rob. We have three children that who are also members of Calvin and are now seeking churches in their hometowns
All over the place.
all over the place in South Carolina and in Minneapolis. So that's exciting to see. I'm
I don't
also the
I don't know how many like students around the classes find these, but if anybody does, some of you might be familiar with Brett and Ellie from Camp Calvin. I don't know if Nick ever did.
he was never a
Okay.
counselor, but he attended Camp
So
Calvin.
so a
So
fellow
yeah,
camper
Brett
maybe.
Steenwyk, Eliana Steenwyk. If you know them, they are
Same clan.
they are out there also looking for a home church right now. um, My other life is I am the head of school and director of academics and instruction at Sheboygan Christian School. It is an awesome Christian school on the lake shore of Sheboygan. And this year we have 505 students, preschool through grade 12. And we are growing a bit. Due to God's work in the community in introducing the concept of Christian education more available to all families across the Sheboygan County, and we are trying to make Christian school affordable to all families in Sheboygan County. We want all kids to have Christian education.
And what are you working on? That's always the follow-up after the introduction. What's going on?
So many things. We are working on so many
Well,
things.
pick one or pick two
Yes,
that are important.
I will.
No, you
I
can
will.
pick as
I
many
will
as
pick
you want.
I'll pick one because one thing that we're working on that we're very, very excited about is a new way of integrating Christian worldview, biblical worldview into everything we do at school and creating language for students so that they know how to verbalize it even at very, very young ages. It's a framework called Teaching for Transformation. And it basically is a way that we are sharing learning targets with our student around biblical worldview. Quick example, I was in second grade this morning, and they had a chrysalis called Fred that just yesterday turned into a butterfly. And just at the very end of the day yesterday, Fred became this gorgeous monarch butterfly. And the kids were all disappointed because it was the very end of the day and they had to leave to go home. So this morning, they did a release of Fred. But before they released him, the teacher spent some time talking about how Fred is something that shows God's reflection and his image. And students they just took some time. They watched Fred in the little cage, and they looked at him, and they observed how Fred reflects God's image in some way. And we went outside, and I just spent some time taking a look at all of their little reflections. And I read things from second graders. God is a beauty creator. spread reflects God's image through his beauty and how unique he's created. And those kinds of words, image reflector and beauty creator, are words that we're using on a regular basis to to express how we're looking at God's world through creation, fall, redemption, and restoration. That arc comes through in all of that teaching. So what we've been doing is we have about 14 different through lines. You've heard a couple of them just in my conversation just now, the story with the butterfly.
Yeah, by through lines you mean creation and joy, or image reflector, those kind of catchphrases.
Yes.
Through
yeah, language that we share with our students to summarize who God is in the big story, and our role specifically in God's big story. So others are idolatry discerner. We are learning how to be idolatry discerners. We're learning how to be truth promoters. Those kinds of through lines, we call them, we can incorporate into our learning targets when we're learning about math and learning how to be an order discoverer in math, and in science, and in social studies, and in English. And then we can then take what we're learning about our place in God's big story and really figure out what our role is as God's children in the story. How can we have an impact with real people who have real needs and do real work? And that's some of that might be outside with community organizations outside of our school, and some of that might be within our school with the very people that God puts us with every single day. How are we going to respond to God's calling within his story? Last year, we had some middle school students who were really struggling with basically just how to restore broken relationships and how to deal with, in middle school, there's just a lot of growing and learning and emotional issues. And they decided to develop a restoration station toolkit and went around and taught every grade level how to use the restoration toolkit when they get into conflict, and created a restoration station in their spaces so that it equips students to deal with conflict and respond to their calling in that. So that's just an example of how we can respond within our own community. And then, of course, there's lots and lots of examples of how we can respond outside of our community. Last year, one of our through lines is neighborhood lovers, and we're really working hard we want our neighbors to know who we are and that we're different. And our kindergartners were learning about how to share stories in their reading, and they decided they wanted to share Bibles with our neighborhood. So they developed a library that's just right outside on our sidewalk, and they fill it with Bible stories and stories of the gospel, and that's a way that they can share the gospel with our neighbors within the actual community that we're living in.
Yeah.
So all of that is, it's a lot. It's just kind of a lot of really great stuff that we're working on here.
In some senses, the idea of teaching for transformation, to have the gospel, the faith in all the subjects, isn't really a new thing. But what I get from teachers at SES who are part of our congregation, the strength is the centralization of the language. Like to know that from 4K to 12th grade, we're going to use the same terms just really simplifies things for students and makes it obvious as you progress through creation, fall, redemption, new creation, redemptive history. Like, it's just easy for them to, like you said, to verbalize. Oh, here's a monarch butterfly. That has to do with beauty creator. Like God created, like that's pretty neat. And we just had it Sunday evening during prayer request time. Long time lower ed Christian school teacher from our congregation, since retired. And she might have only got Teaching for Transformation for like 1 year, maybe 2. And her prayer request was a request of thanksgiving, and just said, and during it she said, "We are God worshipers. We are image or creation enjoyers." And I was like, "Oh, those are through lines." And like the little kids in the service know exactly what you mean, because they've just had this shared language then. And I think that's like kind of the most powerful aspect. I don't know if you agree.
Absolutely. It's helpful for our students to have that same language all the way through kindergarten through grade 12. But it's also really helpful for our teachers to have ways to name it. So this, Christian worldview integration is nothing new in Christian schools. Right. Teachers have been doing that for years and years and years, since the beginning of school. But sometimes it's not as explicit in how they present it. And I think with having now learning targets with language, it just makes the conversation very intentional.
Yep.
The other part of Teaching for Transformation is there's so much more time for reflection, and that's really placed within the day so that there's enough time for reflection.
Yeah.
And that's helpful too, so that everybody is spending time not only thinking about our place in God's story and planning, but also reflecting and writing so that it is a little bit more explicit. And the language helps us, but also everything timed together, the stories, we have storyboards where we can post the reflections so that students can read each other's reflections, or post pictures of what they're doing so that others can see what our job is in our community and in the world.
Yeah. Well, Ann, how can we be praying for you or SES or Calvin CRC?
That's a wonderful question. Thank you for asking. I think this year we have 18 new teachers in our school, and we would love for you to pray for those 18 new teachers as they are entering our community. Everything is new. Everything is different, and support for them and their learning about how to become part of our culture here at SES. And then for Calvin, we are actually, this is a really specific request. We are looking for some music and worship coordination, even a piano player. We would love to have a piano player. Right now, our church is looking for talented musicians that can help us with worship, so that we can continue strong worship there. So those are two very specific things. I hope that's okay.
That's great. No, we love that. Pastor Tim Koyman's done such a great job getting us to pray for one another. He's got kind of this prayer initiative around the classes, and this is just another way we can share kind of specific stuff. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you.
Thanks for taking time out of the middle of your day.
Thank you, Zach.
My kindergartner had a rough morning, so if she ends up in the office today, I'm sorry.
I'm not worried.
All right.
I'm not worried.
Thanks, Ann.
Thank you, Zach.